Good morning. That's a good beat. Thank you all for joining us for this panel on solving the puzzle of people-based marketing, which is quite relevant just given what the Spotify folks just discussed. Today specifically, what we're going to try and cover on this panel is the role of attribution as part of that solution, as part of the solving the puzzle around people-based marketing. Now, typically attribution is used by several marketers to truly understand how their portfolio is performing across advertising and marketing channels, to understand and better understand where they can garner sort of efficiency and effectiveness of their portfolio at a channel, sub-channel, tactic level, the most granular aspect of it. But increasingly, what is happening is that conversation is evolving. And it's evolving because you no longer can have that conversation or that insight just in isolation specific to media. Marketers are now faced with that whole aspect that consumers are becoming more and more informed, more and more connected, and therefore the conversation around attribution really has to be in the context of your audience, their behaviors, their interaction with your brand, how much the segment is worth to you utilizing an attributed lens. And so with that, you're starting to find a lot of synergy occurring these days between attribution systems and DMP systems, but just specifically to pull in that type of data so you have that intersection point between audience and attribution systems. So we're going to go through a couple of questions today to help explore that topic a little bit. I am truly privileged to be joined panelists on stage who will introduce themselves in a minute, who happen to be successful attribution clients of Visual IQ, but also very much thought leaders in their space with their brands. So with that, perhaps you can start with the introductions.
My name is Amy Hugh. I am the VP of Interactive Marketing and Online Experience at H&R Block.
I'm Linda Fournier. I'm the Vice President of Market Insights and Analytics at Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
Lisa Flosnick. I'm responsible for performance marketing at Roku.
Excellent. So the first question we wanted to explore really was, just to give folks a context, I mentioned you guys successfully have deployed attribution systems within your brands. How do you measure, or how do you use attribution platforms today? So Amy, perhaps we can start with you.
So we've been with Visual IQ for about 7 years, and we started attribution about 10 years ago when the attribution really launched. So we have used it traditionally as kind of a bottoms-up optimization lever to maximize publishers. But as Manu said, we're evolving into caring more about identity, because the bottoms-up optimization is only getting us so much, because what we're looking to is deliver measurement across the full funnel. So we want to make sure that the contextual creative that we put out there is driving results. So it is changing our conversation to say, how do we track and identify people, and then how does attribution take that information and help us expand on it in order to be more customizable and personalized?
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Linda, perspective?
We've been using attribution modeling for about 1.5 years. We're implementing, we're in our 2nd year of implementation for cross-channel, and we're in the process of implementing digital and TV. And what's different about us at Cancer Treatment Centers of America, we're a 5-hospital system that focuses on cancer. When individuals are making that decision about where to treat for cancer, it's often a life and death decision. So it's not a situation where you're serving up a display ad and they're clicking on it and making that decision to treat with us. It's definitely multiple touch points and multiple media types. And so understanding how those kind of multiple channels work together to help people make their cancer treatment decision is really critical, and multi-touch attribution has really helped us improve.
Great.
Lisa.
And for Roku, we get maybe, I don't know, I shouldn't even say this, but 5 to 10% of our sales occur on our website, 90% are in retail. So for digital marketing, usually that is a terrible outcome. You think, well, how am I going to measure my performance. And for us, we're able to, somebody buys something, whether it's a player, so it's a media streaming platform, so we sell players and we also embed our software into televisions. Regardless where somebody buys it, when they plug it into their homes, they have to activate that device and either associate it with an existing account or they need to create an account. So in doing that creation or adding a player or TV to their account, we deem that as an activation. So everything that I measure is based on an activation. So it doesn't matter if somebody walked into a Best Buy and purchased or if they bought it on our website, that's what I'm measuring. And of course, Visual IQ helps us with the attribution.
Excellent. So a key part, I mean, one of the things that struck me about each one of you in the businesses is it's different, as you just pointed out. So to that extent, how do you kind of utilize sort of the customer journey aspect of each one of your brands? Meaning, there's so many touch points you guys are collecting. How do you kind of consume it? How do you use it? Perhaps you want to start.
Yeah, sure, I'll start. And I'll start also that we didn't look at everything all at once initially. So we started with paid channels, which is primarily what I'm responsible for. And little by little, we started to add on, what's the effect of some of our organic channels? Or like we have a very robust blog, gets a lot of traffic, and we were sort of like, well, how is that contributing to the business aside from direct sales? So we started adding that into it. So we started adding on additional channels. On top of it, when people buy a device, perhaps they see an ad on their laptop, but then when they plug it in, they don't know that they have to activate it. And usually, what's the thing that's always with you is your phone. So they'll activate on their phone. So the cross-device is also incredibly important for us for that. It's not necessarily a linear progression for the customer journey, but it's opened our eyes for these other channels like our blog that is actually contributing to sales, which it was initially, the purpose of it is more for engagement. So it kind of helps us with making decisions on where do we want to invest more than just a sort of traditional marketing mix.
Great. Linda?
Sure. So for us, one of the big advantages is really looking at, for us, a little more non-traditional marketing, or maybe I should say newer forms of marketing. So in the past, we were heavy TV, and so helping us build that case to move more into digital was a big advantage of using cross-channel attribution, and also being able to measure things that we traditionally couldn't. So when people are making a decision on their cancer treatment or when they're diagnosed with cancer, they really want information right away on their specific cancer type. So native content is really important, and they also want to look at video and view people's personal stories from individuals with cancer. So video, social, native content have become increasingly important and really are such a critical part of that customer journey for us. And so the cross-channel attribution enables us to measure that. And really, it has impacted how we allocate our resources within the company, and it's enabled us to get the buy-in from senior management to move more funds towards creative.
So H&R Block is a unique company in that you only buy our product one time a year and you hate buying it. So I think that's without saying. And we have an online product, and then we also have our brick and mortar store. So for us, identity becomes incredibly important, especially since on HRBlock.com, you have very two distinct methodologies in which you do taxes, but .com is only one doorway. So how do you optimize, measure your media when it's driving foot traffic in and you may never even hit the site? Some offline people might go to the site, they may not go to the site, but the media and the TV and the cross-channel and the cross-platform all emphasizes that one treatment versus the other. So we've been burdened by how we're going to do that, and when we looked at it, the bottoms-up optimizations from attribution was giving us false signals, right? Because unless you did something on .com, we probably optimizing you as a digital client when you were a brick and mortar client. So more or less, we're infusing identity, trying to really create an identity graph so we can serve cat people and dog people, and especially since we have to be really micro-target with that because you don't usually switch your methodology. And it's the offline is still very difficult because it's still kind of a black hole for .coms to measure the impact. So identity with the DMP, with attribution helps us, one, maximize that investment and then be able to credit ourselves more accurately through the DMP and the CRM transaction file.
I know that each one of you is on a sort of evolved with attribution 2 years, 1 year, 6 years, I think.
Yep.
One question I wanted to ask, because you're obviously the attribution platform or the platform is collecting all this information and data about a consumer at that ID level. Do you find that different organizations or different constituencies in your organizations are coming to marketing to solicit that insight or that intelligence?
I'm going to say no, but I'm pushing it to them. One of the things that, thanks to your team, we started to ingest additional information that is customized to us. Each device that we sell has unique attributes to it. We'll know through a digital ID, if you will, what type of a product it is and where it's purchased. So we have a retail sales team that is very focused on what happens in a store, but they don't know necessarily what happens online, especially a company like Amazon who, it's actually like, top retailer of ours. And they're not going to tell us anything other than like, you got this many sales. But in terms of marketing efforts, they're not going to let us know too much. So, but I am able to say, well, I actually know that these were purchased at Amazon. I know that they saw this media, and so we can optimize to that. So our sales team is very interested in it. That they didn't know this was available to them, so that's why I'm pushing it to them, and now they're very interested. And is it a new customer or an existing customer? They like to know that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I find that our creative teams are much more interested in the identity because now you could personalize it. So we are I make no bones about it. Tax is very uncool. It's a very uncool category. It's a very uncool company because you hate doing it. So how do we create stopping power is what we say and good content is good content and it stops and it makes people pause. And because of identity and because of separation of church and state, we've actually been able to make some customizable creative, which is, seems unique for us. We found out that our customers were music lovers or they love to cooking. So, or our retail clients were. So we created some YouTube videos that was all about showing cooking and just talking about like speed of refund, like waiting for water to boil is something that you have to do, waiting for your tax refund isn't. So it's because we were able to get that information, we were able to customize the creative, and because of the identity, we were able to target so effectively. Yeah. And that's been a really good strategy for us, which is contextual, identity, and customization.
Yeah. I think when we spoke in prep for this, Lisa, one of the examples you used was with paid social, I think it was, in terms of how that team came to you to get more intelligence around how to basically publish, I think, around your blog, I think was the...
I think it was the blog, actually, yeah. And it's, again, they didn't know, so that's, again, within marketing. But when we started to tag and track that, we identified that actually the blog was driving a lot more activations than we had thought. Like that wasn't the intent of it. Yeah. The kind of next level for us is, well, what specific type of content is what's driving it? So we have SEO that drives to the blog. People are doing research on, like we might have topics like top free shows or top, there's a lot of free content that does really well. Or trying to think of other types of content, tips and tricks. So people want to know that before they buy. And again, we never really thought of it as an acquisition tool, but it is. So now that team is much interested, and now they're sharing with our CMO, like, oh, look at, we're actually, now you can give us some budget because look at all these acquisition, we're driving. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's get to the crux of the sort of the topic, right, which is people-based marketing. And more specifically, what we spoke about sort of the beginning of the panel was that intersection between attribution and audience. And I think when we spoke, you guys all had very specific examples in terms of how your lens into performance data would be enhanced if you kind of turned the dial and looked at it from an audience segment perspective versus simply from a media perspective. So if both those two worlds were to come together under one roof, how would you guys make different decisions using some of the examples that you kind of outlined previously? How would that sort of evolve with an audience slant to it? Amy, do you want to go first?
For us, it's different audiences have different value, right? So when we were looking at things from just the attribution lens, then it was looking terrible, right? Very, very inefficient CPAs that normally would signal to us, don't invest in them. But when you segment by audience, then you could say, well, this audience is more valuable to me because we're softening the market. And what we were able to do is to make different investments so we have a better prospecting pool. So we can move people down funnel. So I talked to your team a lot about porridge. The bottoms up porridge was too hot, but clicks and engagements were too cold. So how do we make the right measure of porridge? And it first began with who's your audience and therefore what's your goal? And then after that, you could measure the halo effect and how this exposure then leads to a down funnel brand like a display and then to a paid search. So that's helped us a ton.
Got it. Okay. Linda?
I'll share. So as I was just mentioning, that our additional insights that we've had, like pulling in this ID, if you will, knowing where a player or TV is purchased and what type of a product it is, there's value to those. So, and also I didn't mention that whether it's a new or existing customer. So acquiring somebody new is very valuable to us. No doubt that our existing customer base is wonderful, but whenever we want to grow the business, adding new accounts is what we're trying to do. So the fact that I have all that information, we can start to look at, well, this, a TV might cost more than a player, but then within the players, there's a certain range of prices might be more valuable. We're finding maybe a particular retailer is having more valuable customers to us. So being able to optimize to all of that, so the audiences that we can kind of identify who are more valuable to us, or maybe it's a strategic reason that we might want to shift to a particular audience type. So it's kind of pulling it all together.
So just a follow-up to that, because you mentioned that one of your bigger distributors is Amazon and Walmart and these guys.
Yep.
And you don't get that level of insight, but I'm assuming you from the conversion side of the equation, when people come to activate, now you have the ability to kind of understand who activated, what were some of the attributes.
That's right.
How would you guys use that from a campaign perspective or from a pricing perspective?
Sure. So, and we do advertise on retail sites as well, but interestingly, that's not always the place that they buy at. So a lot of people research on Amazon. I think we know that, but then they might walk into a store because they want it right then and there, even though everybody has Prime, it seems like. So. We can look at, well, first of all, was the media that we spent on BestBuy.com incredibly valuable, or did they just walk into some other store? And that also has to do with retail. It's a lot about partnerships, at the kind of sales level. There's relationships that we have with these companies. So it's understanding that. It also gives us a little bit leverage for those conversations with the sales team. So it's kind of one aspect I can share with them, like, oh, this particular thing was not doing well or doing well. And trying to think what else. Was there anything else that I shared with you before?
We'll come to it.
A little bit more valuable. That's all that's coming to me for now. Yeah.
Linda?
Yeah, so one of the things that's interesting for us as a strategy, we've traditionally been destination hospitals. And so we've shifted to really look also at being more regionally focused. And so looking at sort of the demographics and the profiles of people within 100 miles of our hospital, and what is that optimal media mix regionally versus nationally? And even within that, how does somebody who lives by our Philadelphia hospital, is there a different kind of optimization of media and non-media channels that drive them to make that decision versus somebody in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Phoenix, or Atlanta? So I think that's really interesting for us to be able to kind of customize that optimization for the different areas and different geos.
Excellent. I just wanted to double click on one thing you mentioned, Amy, the example you used about the value of media being measured one way, and with an audience lens, you saw that Yahoo, for example, was much more effective because it drove a better quality.
It's like a lead, right? Okay. It's like an assist factor.
Absolutely. So have you guys thought about how you might pull in enterprise level metrics like lifetime value or product affinity or anything of that nature to look at that?
We would love to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's complicated for us because not only do we have the player sales, and there is a certain value having somebody, because we have supported advertising too. But then people can also subscribe to things where we might get some revenue share there. So understanding who these people are and do they have a propensity to buy a bunch of subscriptions that we would benefit from, plus they obviously benefit from enjoying the platform. So yeah, LTV is important.
We have, when we do our upload to LiveRamp or whatever data logics with our CRM file, we do add things like lifetime value and tenure. So then it gives us a more robust kind of targeting platform when we load it into our DMP, into the DSPs. So we find that the richer the data set that we're making, the more powerful it is. So it is, enterprise-wise, we are getting more involved with creative and with our own internal data sciences team. So, and the data, hopefully, like we can ingest their data, they're having a hard time ingesting our data, right? There's a translation problem, but I think that's going to evolve as we're testing and learning and optimizing much faster than the offline channels can. So we get real-time results, and they have a huge latency. So there's more partnership.
Yeah.
I think too on our side, just that relationship with finance. Usually there's so much tension between marketing and finance, and having models to kind of prove out our assumptions and our projections has really changed that relationship. So when you talk about kind of pulling in some of the financials, we've got that kind of open rapport, and we've got that credibility that they're willing to spend a little more time on developing the lifetime value because they can see that model versus kind of a gut feel or directly attributable, which is such a small percentage of your total journey.
Excellent. Well, I think we're up at our time. I wanted to thank you guys for providing your perspective on that sort of new layer of marketing intelligence, specifically the intersection point of attribution and audience. So how about a nice round of applause for our panelists? And thank you, folks, for listening. Thank you.